Hello, everyone, and welcome to tonight's Get in Tune. I have a wonderful show planned for tonight. I got a returning guest who is a fan favorite, one of my favorite people to chat with, and we'll be bringing him on in a minute. He's got a new book, and I started reading it, and it's fantastic. But before we begin, just a couple of announcements. First of all, um, I know I've been away for a couple of weeks. I just had a bit of a busy schedule, so now I'm back, and I got the next good month planned out with some fun shows. So make sure you tune in for them. I also wanted to remind you guys that if you go on Amazon, my book, The Whimsical Whiz, the collection of all the 23 strips with a couple of pages bonus features, is available on Amazon. You can get that. The new Wiz strip came out today at the Wiz Comic on both Instagram and Facebook. And my last announcement before we bring the guest on May 4th, it is obviously, Star Wars Day. May the 4th be with you. It is also Free Comic Book Day. There are a lot of shows and stuff happening then. I will be at a brand new show on Saturday, May 4th, in Croton on the Hudson. It's Croton Comic Con. It's in partnership with Third Universe Comics over there, and I'll be over there from, I think it's 10 to 5 or 10 to 6 show. So I'll be there all day. I will have stuff for sale, some free stuff, and I'll be doing a bunch of drawing that day. So anyway, let us bring on our guest. You guys know him. I have a large collection of his books. He's got a new book out called How to Be Super Creative. All right. You can see my little business card bookmark right there. But let's bring on Chris Hart.
Michael, how you doing?
Doing
Thanks for
good.
having me.
Oh, anytime. Thank you for coming on. It's a pleasure to be having you back and chatting with you about your new book, which we are going to get into in a moment.
Sure.
Before we do that, though, we already have people in the comments. I just want to say hi to. So hi to Kimberly and Dylan and Robin and TSL Art Studio and David. Everybody, thank you for tuning in. We really appreciate it. Let's just see anything. Okay, so Chris, I don't think we need to do like an introduction where you got to tell people who you are by now. I think we know that you have written how many books now? Would you say?
Well, 100 original books, and then there are some other books that are made from those books. I'm not even counting that, but about 100.
About 100 books you've written, and we were talking back.
I don't have any hobbies. That's the thing.
Listen, what you do is fantastic. I can literally tell you, if I look back at my bookshelf, which you can't see right now, I'd have to count, but there's at least 15 to 20 of your books over there that I've had.
Thank you very much.
Going back to the 90s.
Oh gosh.
I am such a fan of your books, and this book here that you got out now, How to Be Super Creative. I forgot the Artist's Guide to Unleashing Your Imagination. This is a departure, like I said, backstage from what you have done with your other books in the past. I think this is a great book. I have read the introduction and chapter 1, and in the process of chapter 2 right now. I will have this book done by Friday at the latest. It is a very, what's the word I'm looking for? Well, it's an enjoyable read. I have to say that. It's interesting because, like I said, it being a departure, your books are mostly almost instructional, a lot of artwork, and very much little tips as you view the artwork.
Sure.
This is the reverse. It's a wordy book, but it's an interesting discussion you're having in the book here of what kind of, in the beginning, what is creativity, what is the imagination, and how do we unleash the imagination to work for us.
Right, that's right. It also does have a decent amount of illustrations and some interesting illustrations I've also gotten permission, which is wonderful to get this, to show some very cool stuff in the book. One part, I talk about the difference between someone who's talented, gifted, and then the super talented people
Yeah.
like Mozart. And I have a sister who's an opera singer, and she said, Chris, Mozart has never made a mistake. Every symphony he did it from his head right down. There's no erasure, no smudging, no redo. And she said, that stuff is still available. His handwritten files are still available. So it's in the book. You can see Mozart's handwritten symphonies and composition.
Yeah, that was actually quite interesting to see for me. It was one of the things that even before I read it, I stopped as I flipped through the book on that page because I'm like, this doesn't look like anything that you would have drawn. And I'm like, what is this? So then I stopped, and that stood out to me. It was
I don't draw anything for the cello. No,
Yeah.
It's definitely not. No.
But yeah. So before we get into like really discussing the book, can you tell us how you came up with the idea?
I'd love to tell you. Yes, I'll tell you exactly where it came from. I was on a site for artists, and they're mainly aspiring artists, but I like to meet people and see new talent. I hire talent, and I was listening to a discussion, and they're giving themselves lots of advice, and I knew it was wrong. It was just it could hurt them because they didn't have access to somebody who could help them navigate through certain things. I mean, if I'm trying to learn how to play football, you get a coach, but it's not always available for artists. So I thought, I can be the coach. So I think that people have ideas about creativity and make it difficult for them to access it. They think of it as this amorphous thing. They really don't know what it is. They don't know where it is. And every once in a while, it ignites and gives you an idea, and then you have to sit there and wait for another 3 days for another good idea to come. Or if it gives you a good idea and you want to take it further, suddenly you're out of inspiration. And I have to understand, besides I'm, a creative person. I'm prolific also. And I grew up in a family with, television writer. And my grandfather was a wonderful musician. I have an uncle who is a fine artist. And we are all I got friends who are, writers. Professional writers attack their creativity differently from aspiring people. And they could benefit from it, be interesting to them. For instance, for me, the imagination is not this amorphous cloud that exists somewhere. It's got structure. It's got departments in it. And a lot of times when someone gets stuck, they're going into the wrong department. Their idea, their desire for an idea needs to be developed in a different department. For instance, suppose you have an idea and you're trying to develop it, and all of a sudden, you don't like it. You see everything wrong with it. Now you're judging yourself. You think you're judging badly. Well, first of all, you're supposed to judge yourself. That's how you make things better. Don't be an artist who loves everything they do. So there's nothing wrong about judging yourself. Don't judge yourself by judging yourself. So there are 3 departments of the imagination. First is the idea department. That's where it stays in flux. Ideas are bouncing around, connecting to other ideas. You're kind of trying to fuse them together. They fall apart. And so you're in there. Then often people who really want to get started, they take it out of the idea department too soon and go to the editorial department where they can, see what's wrong with it. But it's not there yet. Leave it. It's uncomfortable to just kind of be amorphous. But if you leave it there longer, it's like watching a thing cook to fruition, before you put the icing on it. The last one is the construction department, because you can have all these great elements, but unless you know how to put them together, this would be good for chapter 1. This would not be good for chapter 2. Maybe we reprise it at chapter 10. So those are the 3 general areas, and I show you how to, access them in a way that's practical, so it doesn't stay theoretical. And also, I would hear advice being given, and I've heard this also throughout the years that artists get lots of advice. I don't know why. If you're a biologist, no one tells you how to split a gene. If you're a physicist, no one's going to tell you how to measure a light year. But if you're an artist, they're going to tell you exactly what you need to do, to be an artist. And that means if you're stuck, go to the beach, relax, enjoy yourself, take your mind off your work, come back and you'll be inspired, re-inspired. It doesn't work. Have you ever seen a writer on the beach jotting down notes furiously? You have never seen that. And there's a reason. So you're home, you're stuck, you're in a creative mode, and you can't quite get the ideas. You're stuck, but you're in a creative mode. So instead of staying in a creative mode where you're stuck, you go to a seashell mode. Now I can tell you, you're going to do better staying where you are, even if you're stuck, because there's ways to get around it. May I suggest one?
Yes.
Okay. If you're stuck, your imagination's in a knot, and your imagination is never stopping. It's always going, even when you're sleeping. You can wake up with ideas. So it's always going. And you can't make much this way. And so you try over and over and over. But at some point, you have to say, wait a second, let's solve this. So what you do is you take out another project that you like, something, a personal project, maybe an easy project, and you start on that. It has nothing to do with what you're doing in front of you. Nothing. After a few minutes, this part of your brain that's in a knot starts to relax. But the imagination's playing now. It's going here. You're not directing it. It's going here. And you're not telling it to keep at that same thing that's bothering you. And you, wait a minute. And you get the pencil and you go. And you're back on it. Really. And you don't have to get sand in your shoes. That's another thing. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting look at it, because, as I mentioned to you, before we came on, this is actually a conversation that I've had with my friends, and the advice conversation is something we talk about a lot.
Mhm.
As a comic artist, as an animator or whatever, everyone's always looking at the work. Everyone's telling you, oh, try it this way,
Mhm.
or you should be putting out books like this and whatever. It ends up messing with your head, and you question yourself.
Mhm.
Sometimes there's too much advice. So
Yeah.
I'm at the point where, just personally, I listen to my gut. If it feels right, I do it. If it doesn't feel right, I don't do it.
Mhm.
But the imagination conversation comes up a lot, because we are constantly, I got a few close friends who I share my ideas with. They share their story ideas with me, and we bounce stuff off each other, see what's going on. But the question is, like, where did this come from? We're always asking each other those things.
Yeah,
And yeah,
but
go ahead.
Mike, that's a great question,
Yeah.
but it's not going to move you any further on the checkerboard.
No,
It's
exactly.
like, why can I hear?
Yeah.
It's sort of like that. You can. Now, I talk about it in the book that imagination isn't something you can really, always get your handle on, because it's like, and it's an amazing thing, because you could be drawing, for instance, a figure of a man standing on a sidewalk, right?
Mhm.
You can have the very best brain surgeon put a scope in your ear, look in, and he can't see it. He can't find that image anywhere, but you see it well enough to draw it.
Yeah.
So you just have to trust that it's there, and that yet you can access it. And there are ways to access this that don't always, to some people, feel like the height of creativity, but it really is. And what that is sometimes, and this comes from being a professional artist and writer, sometimes you have to draw something really good without being inspired. How the heck do you do that?
Yeah.
I show you step by step several different ways to do that, to come up with something that's really good when you don't really have a feeling for it. And to prove it in this book, I wrote these without an idea what it was going to be. I wrote them because I didn't want to know the answer and dazzle you with a great idea and then not be able to. So I did it just improv, and I ended up following my advice, and I was like, wow, that's good. Sometimes it's a certain progression.
Yeah.
For instance, if you're going to, I can't come up with at this moment, but you say someone buys a kid has a dog. He has what's the next idea? He has a puppy. What's the next idea? Get more specific each time. He got the dog today. The next thing, he was supposed to take care of it, but it ran away. His parents gave it just one thing after the other. Most of the time, when you think of coming up with an idea, we come up with the burst, the whole idea, like a slug line in the movie, you know.
Mhm.
There's robots trying to destroy the world, and our heroes got to save them. Sometimes you can build creativity by just coming up with one inventive thing after another inventive thing. And before you know it, it's there.
You know, in this book, I'm gonna find it and talk to you later about it because I do want to bring up something. You
Yeah.
had a really interesting line that was one of the favorite things I had, and I will find it because I forgot to mark the page that it was on. But you talked about imagination and feelings having to work together.
Oh yeah. Here's the thing. This
Yeah,
is a real problem for a lot of people who give a lot of advice.
yeah,
They really think you have to be in touch with your feelings. Now, feelings can get you, fairly far in an idea, but they can't bring you the whole way because you need a concept.
yeah,
A concept is not a feeling. A feeling is not. It can be deep, but it's not wide, not multidimensional. But an idea can span time. It could be about this boy who did that. Minute you say who did this, it's no longer a feeling. You have time involved. You have a concept.
yeah,
So it feelings are great, but you have to always go back to the basic idea. If you just follow a feeling, it's a stream of consciousness. And some people can make that work, but not usually.
yeah.
So that's one thing. Oh, another thing I thought I'd mention, because sometimes um, you hear this saying, and I have this in the book also, trying to puncture some. And also, by the way, I want to tell people watching, hopefully we'll do some Q&A, and I would love to answer your questions. I don't want to just hog up your whole time. But I want to mention this one thing. You hear this sometimes. Um, do what you love, and the money will follow. Okay? Now, there are thousands of actors in LA doing what they love, and most of them are broke. Because sometimes you have to find out if what you love is what you're most talented in, or maybe it's something else. God forbid. God forbid you're good at something else. So perhaps the better saying is don't do what you love. Love what you do well. And I want to give you an example of that from the book.
Yeah.
Say you've got a guy who's a landscape artist, watercolor artist. And for 12 years, he's been doing his watercolors. He's pretty good, but he hasn't made much headway. So then one day, a cafe in the neighborhood, maybe it's Greenwich Village, says they want him to do a mural of a cafe in Italy in a restaurant. So he paints it, spends a week painting it. A week later, a local television show does a piece on it. A local newspaper does another piece on it. The average artist in this situation says this to himself: I'm getting so much attention, now's the time to bring out my watercolors. I want you to say this: the next thing I do is going to be a cafe in Milan. I mean, this guy's been toiling away for 12 years. He does a cafe in a week, and suddenly media all over the place. When something like that happens to you, bells should ring. It reminds me of Babe Ruth, who was a great pitcher. People don't realize that he was a great pitcher. And then they found out that he was a monster home run king. So they said, you're not pitching anymore. Now, he may always have loved pitching, but he was a fantastic home run hitter, and that's what he did. So if you can live with that sort of trade, you have a better chance of doing well with your work. On the other hand, no one can tell you what you should follow or shouldn't, but there are ways to find out. And sometimes it's very satisfying because you just know your way around. When I first started in books, I had been writing television shows and screenplays for different studios. And for some reason, I got to do this book. I wasn't looking for it, great. So I did it. And they called me in, the publisher. They said, all right, we're going to go over the galleys. I didn't know what that meant. That's the raw pages where it's stapled and everything. They tell us what you think of all this stuff. We want to look at color, layout, this. And I didn't know what a galley was. So I decided I wasn't going to say anything. The book designer is there. The editor is there. The production person is there. And I'll just let them make all the decisions. But they turn to me and they say, what do you think of this? And I said, what do you think of it? And they say, I think it's good. I said, good, let's go with that. And another few pages, then they finally said, what do you think? And I said, well, I think that this page looks skimpy, and you can steal an image from this page and put it here if you blow up this image and make it a big one. And they looked at each other, and I thought I'd said something stupid. And they said, yeah, we can do that. It went on. Another few pages. What do you think of this? Well, I think this and that. And then I just started telling them every page what I thought should happen to the book. And they're writing down. And there was like everything they thought was good. I walked out of there. And I thought, I don't know books the way these people know books. How did I know how to do that? How did I know how to do that? It was like, what the hell? And so my comment to the people who are watching is this: if what you do seems easy, but other people struggle, you may be talented in that area. You really might be. You don't think so because, it's easy. That doesn't mean that you're not talented. So and there's other stuff about talent in the book as well. So is there anything I did want to, oh God, yeah, I covered some of this. Well, I have other stuff, but I would love to hear some questions if you do, Mike. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I'm good with that. We have a question. I don't know if it's pronounced Luco or Lucho, but he asks if you have an animated film or series that inspires you.
Animated movies? Well, not as much the recent ones, because some of the classics, which I actually put uh, in a book. I thought that the greatest animated film of all time, and I was very, very pleased to get permission to put that in. Um, and so I talk about that and the decisions made to make a great movie great. And but I'm not following those in particular. I like at this point I like images, I like artists, but not so much movie theaters.
I get you there.
Yeah.
I'm kind of the same way at the moment. I've been and I told you this. I've been watching a lot of older things lately because the new stuff just hasn't really caught my eye. And it's but looking back on these older things are inspiring me to create stuff that I didn't think about doing
Right.
before. So I'm loving it. Um,
I also like it's not that I don't like the new movies, I do, but I get the character designs.
mhm,
And sometimes you see the stills also.
yeah.
And the turnarounds are interesting, and then how they make it a buddy pick and this. I don't need to see the entire story. I get the premise, and I kind of get a lot of it already. That's what happens with me. But thanks for the question. Thank you very much.
Does anyone else have another question out there? Please ask, and I'll let Chris know about them. In the meantime, I just wanted to do a couple of things. One, I wanted to let the audience know the table of contents here, so they know what topics you're specifically talking about.
Okay.
And then we could look at some pages that you sent me from the book.
Sure.
So the first one is the introduction, A Road to Creativity, which is actually your story on how your creative path happened. And I found it very fascinating.
Oh,
It was a very interesting read for me. Then chapter one's on getting inspired, and like I said, I read that. That was a very interesting. Um, uh, I'll use the word dialogue that you gave on how kind of creativity and imagination like work. How your imagination works. Now,
may I interject on one thing, Mike?
yeah,
Thanks. It's also I wanted to say for our viewers, thank you so much. Many of whom I know on my Facebook pages. Now, I also make the case in the book, and it's important, and it's early on, that artists are different from other people. They really are. And I give an example. For instance, if somebody else were looking at a police sketch artist, right, and he's trying to describe the police sketch, what he sees, not artist, he might say something like, his eyes were blue, his hair was green, he had a smile. Now, the artist might say it this way: he has brown eyes, he has blonde hair, he smiles, he's smiling. They see it in real time. It's happening in front of them. The other is a memory, and this is happening. It's your way to artists have the way to conjure something up and have it be alive, and that's why they can also recall things better, because for the other person it's distant. They can't bring it back. They miss pieces. They don't see it all visually, but you do. You think everybody sees this way. They don't. They're a special group. Trust me.
Yeah. No, you're right. That makes a lot of sense, and it is and it's how I think. I know that I'm so visual
Yeah.
that you know, even when I talk to you're right. It's description. When I even talk to my wife about stuff, I'm talking visually, and she just sometimes doesn't get how I see things. You
Right.
know. Um, Chapter 2, your amazing imagination. That's what I'm currently in right now.
Mhm.
I can't go into too much detail because I'm only like 3 pages in about it.
That's a fun one.
But yeah, no, it's a, like I said, everything. You know what I really love, and I said this earlier. It's because this is different from your other books. You're
Yeah.
just kind of talking really about your thoughts, just organized in a nice book. Yeah, this is your thoughts on how it works. And as someone who has been a professional artist, as someone who spent his life as a creative person creating comics or animations or whatever, you're nailing it. It's even though everybody's different, we all have, as artists, we have a similar mentality. um, when I talk to a lot of people on here, and I've said it with you in the past on here, when I ask you about your inspirations or stuff about, and you mentioned Disney movies, and I'm like, it's the same Disney movies that I love.
Yeah.
And um, we have a bit of an age gap, not a huge one, but a bit of an age gap. And so you saw what I saw in reruns or on VHS, you saw live in the theater, you know, and it was a different, I think it's a different experience for you seeing it on the big screen than me seeing it on my television.
Well, actually, what happened was when I was like 13 or 14.
Mhm.
A lot of these I didn't see very many in the theater,
Mhm.
but they used to rerun them. Disney, it'd be like an event. They bring out this again, or bring out Snow White and Seven Dwarfs again. So I would go to the theater with a friend or by myself and see it in the big screen, not on TV. I could not believe it. Also, what you realize is that the music is so prominent.
Yeah.
When you talk about dealing with thoughts and everything, I'm also trying to be very practical and giving people advice. It really helps, because being productive is also helpful. You don't sit with a drawing for 3 weeks if you meant to do it in 2 days. It could drive you crazy. You feel bad about yourself. You don't have to. Everyone does that, but in the professional world, we deal with it a little differently. For instance, suppose you get this. I talk about this in the book. Suppose you have a picture and you do the left eye. It looks great. You do the right eye. Now you realize that they don't quite align together. So you erase the left one and you redo that one. And now the right one doesn't look good. And the right one needs to be changed a little, and the left one doesn't do. You know what you do in a situation like this? Throw it out. Most people stick with it for hours. Throw it out. Move on. Find a different way to say the same thing. You get this feeling that someone's watching over your shoulder, and they'll know that you really meant to do the other one you threw out. No, there's no one here. There's just you. If you throw those eyes out and do them a little differently, and it go great. So I'm trying to give some practical advice and things. Like the people who have the most false starts to a drawing are the professionals. It's the beginners who want to get it right in the first try. Professionals are not wedded to it. They're looking to get it out, get their ideas out. They know it's not going to be finished. But if you draw so you need to be perfect, then halfway through the drawing, if you do something wrong, you're going to have to try to incorporate that into the drawing, even though you don't like it. Because if you don't, you're going to erase it, you're going to change it. So these types of tips are really for beginners and aspiring artists. I don't think they're taught enough, but this is what people do who really want to get their work looking good and done.
Yeah.
So sorry to interrupt you, Mike.
No, no, not at all. Listen, as you were talking, we got more
Oh, good.
comments and questions and people popping in. So
Okay.
hello to Mike Wilkie and Tim Jones, and we got some. Uh, Heidi says, "I have a lot of your older books. Always used them when I was younger. Looking forward to this new book with all your advice."
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you.
And
Yes.
and I'm sorry. And David asks this question, which I actually find interesting, and you touch upon something in this book that I read.
Mhm.
But it says, "I see an anatomy model in your background, but a lot of your books, your cartoon style. Do you use that when drawing in some way?"
I have to know anatomy because figure drawing is the basis of all artwork, and it has been since the Middle Ages. People have been drawing for the model, since way before Michelangelo, and you have to know certain things. For instance, when you put, if you have a cartoon book and you're going to draw a fairly realistic guy or superhero, and you have the hips and you put the legs straight down, you have to know that in the edge of the hips is something called the great trochanter, and it is the biggest joint in the body, and it will make the hips look much wider, low on the hips, not high. And so all of a sudden, by knowing some of these things, you just look for them, and your drawing starts to have a little more authority. And when your drawing has a little more authority, the viewer goes with you. Whatever the character's doing, how he looks, they're on board. But if it doesn't quite look right, you have a harder project, job to do. So that's a great comment. You don't have No one has to be, unless your job calls for it, an anatomist, or know every piece of skeletal structure or the limbs. But there are certain major places to know. For instance, I did a book on human proportions, figure it out, human proportions. I've never seen this proportion delineated anywhere, but to me, it's one of the most important ones. Is that where's the elbow go? If your arm is relaxed, how high up does it go? You say, well, it's your forearm is much shorter from the wrist, the elbow, than from the elbow to yeah, okay. But what if you're measuring from the fingers? And there's all sorts of ways you can get confused. But the elbows, if relaxed, are at the level of the bottom of the rib cage, the last rib in front. That's where they are. And you'll get it right every time. You know certain things. So I actually think in some ways proportions are more useful. It's great to know anatomy, but for just figure drawing, because there's a lot of stuff in anatomy that is great for internal definition. But you also have to know the proportions. Otherwise you can draw great muscles, and it might be like not the right, heads high or something. Yeah. So, but anatomy is very very important, and I did a book for that on that for Random House account a long time ago.
You have a couple of anatomy books, actually, correct?
Yeah.
I
Oh
know
yeah,
I have
manga one too.
what?
A manga one too.
Yeah. Oh, you do? I don't know. I
Yeah.
have one of your manga books behind me. I actually have a couple of your manga books. Um, but I know I have the one on simplified anatomy, which was kind of like when it was popular with the I guess like that whole Bruce Timm-ish Batman
Oh
the
yeah.
animated series,
Yeah.
kind of like the straights
Oh
versus
yeah, yeah.
curves type of stuff. You had one not just on proportions, but didn't you have one on I don't remember the title right now, and this is the one you mentioned in the book. It's like simplified. Uh, it's not a lot of the about the muscles. It's more about anatomy on top of
Mhm.
of the um,
Oh no, I know what you're saying. This is
uh,
another thing I could talk
yeah.
about your imagination and ideas. Sometimes you notice things and you don't notice that you're noticing things, and you don't realize there's value, and you just had an idea that has value. I'm like I say, my mind is always worrying or worrying, but it happens to me all the time. But this time I was clever enough to stop. I was thinking about doing an anatomy book, and then I realized that all the anatomy books, all these classical anatomy books, no one's really. I mean, they didn't look like they were moving to me from the bookstore, but there was a reason. You get the first layer of muscles under the skin, then they show you another chapter on the secondary muscles under the skin, and then the tertiary, which is the third level, where you can see intestines and kidneys. And I thought, nobody cares. Nobody cares about how you draw a kidney. They want to draw a figure. I'm going to do a book where all we show is the surface muscles. If you can't see it on the surface, I'm not interested. And no one had done that before that I know of. And it sold 200,000 copies, which is very healthy.
Yeah, no, I don't know if I don't think I own that one, but I've seen it, and I've flipped through it a bunch of times, and it's a fantastic.
No, thanks.
Because for me, and this is where I remember being in like a Barnes and Nobles and looking, because my issue has always been thigh muscles. You know, where do the muscles actually fall in the thigh at different angles and all that stuff. That's always so. Every time I see a book on anatomy, I always go to the legs and I just look at look at that stuff.
Right.
We have another comment from Tim Jones, who says your books really helped me when I created my strip, which I still do. And he's got a terrific strip called Sour Grapes. If you guys haven't checked it out,
that's great.
Sour Grapes is a hysterical strip. I love it. One of my favorites. And soon I'll
Thank
have
you,
one
Tim.
in the background.
Thank you, Tim. And there's so many nice comments. I don't know how to join the chats. Otherwise, I would be typing all night here. So I just want to thank you all for such really nice comments. I appreciate them.
Yeah, it's you got a lot of people who love your stuff, man. It's fantastic.
Well, that's great. I interact with so many people on Facebook. I get to know them, and but this way with this book, I could get to have something more in depth and reach them in a way where they would go, "Oh yeah, that happens to me."
Yeah.
Like, how do you? It's a common problem. How do you get some advice from someone looking at your drawing? You show it to your mother. You know, she's gonna like it. You know, how do you get somebody who's good? You can't always go get someone who's good, but I show them in the book how, with just a few simple techniques, to make sure that the person who's judging your book gives you advice that's worth listening to. Because you know why? You don't want an academic. Your drawing is for the average person. So you need a way to tease out the thoughts from the average person, because they don't always know what they think. Sometimes they're reluctant to say. They think, well, I can't judge this thing. It's already done. You're like, no, I want you to tell me what you think. But anyway, so over here.
So I forgot what chapter I left off on. So
I'm sorry.
It's okay. I don't mind. That's what this show's about. Let's talk and answer questions. And so I'll just go back to the beginning. So it's the introduction, the road to creativity. Chapter 1 is getting inspired. Chapter 2 is your amazing imagination. Chapter 3 is going deeper. Chapter 4 is words and pictures. Chapter 5 is seeing like an artist. Chapter 6 is the aspiring professional artist. And chapter 7 is popular wisdom to reconsider. And then you end with the index, which I love that you have an index. I was flipping through it just to kind of see what topics and stuff I could look forward to in the book. And a lot of books don't have indexes for this type of stuff. I would think. I don't know. I mean, I haven't read many books on the theory of imagination creativity. Some books, from Disney people. I remember years ago, I read there was a book out from Imagineers talking about how they handle situations. That I read, but that's like really the only book that I read that was really on kind of theory. A lot of it came from life experience in my eyes and talking to people. So no, I love that you have an index on here about where they can find stuff and understand different things here, like I don't know, the editorial department, which is something you mentioned, and one of the departments of imagination. And then it tells me the pages I can actually go and
the editorial department is different from what most people would think. And we all have the ability to use it, but we don't always know what it is. We think the editorial will edit things and be critical. Be critical of us. That's not, you don't want that. But you have to have an editorial department. if you're an author, you have to have an editor. But what they tell you, what your editorial department will tell you, and you can key into it, is not whether it likes something, but whether it works. For whom? The viewer, not for you. It's not about your experience. The editorial department, if you key into it, you can read something and realize, have it in your mind that someone else is reading it, not you. You're not pleasing yourself. And then you read it, and all of a sudden you realize, oh wait, that's going to make the person think that the character is not a nice person. This is a nice person. I can't use that sentence. Well, suddenly something's happening. Now, if you were doing it for yourself, you read it, and whatever you wrote, you say, oh, that's a pretty good sentence where it makes them look not nice. It's pretty good. And the editorial department will go, that's not what you want to do. You don't want that. Let's not do that. And you're not going to get strokes in the editorial department, but you're going to come up with something where hopefully people will like it a lot more, and those will be your strokes.
That's good advice, because it's what was I going to say? The way you broke it down into the three categories of departments there, and the way you speak about it, it's like you're looking at an actual, I don't know, like what's the word I'm looking for? Workflow method. So there's the idea, you come up with the concept, you start figuring it out, then it moves on to the editor, and then it moves on to actually the construction concept of it. So you have all these different departments, just like you'd be working in the real world, with different departments, and I love that. I love it. It makes it simple for people to understand, and I think that's great. Now, I've been holding up the book, and so I just wanted to put the cover up on the screen for a bit here. Now, this book, it's not. Usually your books are like 8.5 by 11 or something.
Right.
This is more, a little bigger than Digest, I think. Correct? It's. I'd have to get a ruler.
Yeah, that's right. It's a nice little chunky book.
Yeah.
I think it's got some high quality production values in it.
Yeah, it's really nice. I'm really really impressed by the way it's put together. I mean, I wouldn't expect a poorly put together book, but I mean the way the book, the way you use the fonts on the cover, the way you use the artwork in there.
Right.
You got your little pull quotes throughout the book there. It's and then, like, I'm just flipping through it. I don't know what chapter I'm in, but you break it down. Here's a section on animation and graphic novels and children's picture books. So you're talking about them, and this is probably the section about the pictures and words.
That's right.
In that chapter.
I'm trying to tell people what goes into each one.
Yeah.
And you can decide for yourself if it's something you like to do, because sometimes something sounds good, but something else might be better.
Yeah. And that's and you know what? That's actually happened to me as an artist, where I create something as a comic, because in my head most stuff's either a comic or an animation, and then I realize, this would be a really good children's book.
Oh.
And so that's actually, I don't have the book out yet, but I'm working on a story right now of what I thought would be a great children's book, and I mean great comic, and I'm rewriting it in a children's book format.
Mm-hmm. Oh, good.
That
sounds like fun.
Yeah, that's the other thing. I'm one of those people with way too many ideas, that I'm always like, I come up with something, I work on it, I stop for a little bit because I got another idea, and the problem is I got to get all the ideas on paper so I don't forget them, and then I go back to what I was working on and just be like, I'll come back to you later.
I talk about that in the book. I do. I really do.
I am a fountain of ideas. That's
okay.
That's one of my, I guess, if you want to call it, talents. Is yeah. I got great. I could come up with stories and find, I used to do a lot of editing for Friends Comics. I find plot holes. I find all this stuff, the suggestions that I do. It's just, I have a knack for storytelling. That I know, and not always the even though I could do it through drawing and illustration, that's how I'm trained. I just see everything as I go. My whole thing is story, story, story. That's what I'm focused on constantly.
Mhm.
So that's how I see things. But let's take a look at a couple of pages in the book here. So we're going to go to the dog basket here. This is a nice little one of the drawings in there. Um, I love this piece.
Oh, thanks.
I love I
That's
it.
funny.
Oh, go
That's
ahead.
It's from my book. Draw 100 things to make you happy. I said
Yeah.
that made me happy. You know?
No, it is. I love the way you when you draw like cute animals. That's something I really like in your work
Oh, thanks.
is how you bring cuteness out in a few simple sketches. And what I also love about your work is a lot of the times you just leave it in pencil. You know, you just have a nice. I just love how your pencils
Yeah,
are.
I like pencil. I really like
Yeah,
it. Yeah,
yeah.
I've always liked it.
I'm the same way. I actually
Yeah.
thought about doing a comic all in pencil, not going over in ink, and just see maybe if that'll work for me because I love drawing in pencil so
Hmm.
much. And then we got the fairies and bees piece.
Oh yeah, that was pencil illustration for a cover from my book called "Drawing Fairies: A Believer's Guide." That was a wonderful book. I felt. I mean, yes, my book, but I get enthusiastic, and I love doing it. We did a sequel also, and it was also very different. This is not the same thing as my retro cartooning stuff,
Yeah,
but it was really a great experience, and it was my publishers gave me the opportunity to do that because it means it was a departure, but they believed in me, and so I was able to do it.
and this is the book. If I remember last time, I think we talked about it where this is not just like a how to draw book. There's also a story
That's
behind
right.
this,
Yeah,
and it's I have to look for it and get it. I want to check this book
I
out.
hadn't seen it before. I thought that'd be an interesting thing. It's a story, and there's a narrative that goes up to the point where all of a sudden the fairies appear, and then it takes off in the how to draw. But each character in it has a little profile on who they are and their role in the kingdom. And it's really nice. So I must have done it during the winter because it kept me company the whole time.
No, this is fantastic. I love this type.
I always liked fantasy characters
Whoops,
as a kid. I really did.
sorry.
That's another
Um,
one.
it was no. I'm the same way. I'm a big fantasy fan. It's funny. I love fantasy, but I tend to draw more sci-fi.
Mhm.
It's the weirdest thing. I wanna actually do a fantasy story, but every time I sketch, it's like I don't really have the idea. It's I get sci-fi ideas. And then here is another piece.
Yeah, a baby dragon meets a fairy, and I was talking about the how to create a relationship between two characters. So they're not standing straight up. The posture, the proximity of the two characters is everything.
Mm.
So they have a relationship, and all I've done is have one bend over toward the other, and the other one is leaning over to the first one. These sort of tips are in the book.
Yeah, yeah.
It,
Like no, go ahead.
I try to tease this out of the reader. What is your intention, and how are we going to make that happen? Rather than I'm going to do a really good drawing. It's going to really look at the character. Okay, but what do you want this image to portray? And then you can do a really good drawing. And those are kind of things. It's just that sometimes putting a priority one step ahead of something else.
Yeah, yeah.
Does anybody else have a comment or?
We have a comment from the TLS Art Studio. If I can get to the proper screen, I'm sorry. They say, I think the book is of high quality. The materials, I truly appreciate it. I have
Oh,
read it cover to cover and will study it too.
I know who will. This is a gentleman who is a frequent visitor to my Facebook page. Very important part of the Facebook.
Cool.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, I'm agreeing with. I mean, I haven't read it cover to cover yet, but I will by the end of like I said, by Friday, this book will be done. I'm enjoying it so
Oh,
much
thank you.
that Because you know what, it's for me, and I don't know if this is because I also have years of experience as a professional. Um, Sometimes it feels like you're inside my head. Like I'm reading this and I'm like, I could have, I like you're writing what I'm thinking. You know,
Yeah, yeah.
and so
Well, we're all artists, whether we're early on, intermediate, advanced, or professional. We all see and think the same way, but sometimes we need a little hint at what one path that works a little better than the other path. But it's always up to anybody. Not, that my way isn't the only way, but I do see certain advantages in certain things. I see my friends and colleagues also taking certain paths, and so I thought, well, I'm going to say so.
yeah, yeah, no, that's great. I mean, this really is.
You know, I did a book that wasn't that dissimilar, wasn't
Mhm.
so dissimilar to this one when I back in like a long time ago. It was called Drawing on the Funny Side of the Brain
Got it. Love it.
because it was how to come up with jokes for cartoons and comic strips because hadn't seen that anywhere. And the problem is that most people who want to do a comic strip or a panel, the first thing they think of is, oh, great, I'm going to do this. What do I draw? What do I say? Where's the joke? And so I said, all right, so you have to start with a joke. Some people actually draw it and then come up with a joke. If you can do that, that's great, but that's not usual. And so it was a lot of words and had a lot of drawings, but really a lot of words really giving sort of an inside look because I had worked on uh, for Mad Magazine and a major comic strip. And so I had certain things I had learned. I passed them on. It did nicely. It really did nicely. It was fun to do.
I will say that might be my all-time favorite book of yours.
Oh, you know that book. You're just
I have a copy of it on my show. Let me tell you, I bought that book when it came out. That's one of the books from the '90s. I bought it at
oh,
the same time. I think I got your everything you wanted to know about cartooning, but were afraid to draw, or something
yeah,
like that.
yeah.
I have, and there was the one on cartoon
Right,
animals you
right,
did at
right.
that era. So like those three books were like my first introduction to the books that you were putting out. Now I don't know if I bought them at the time they were out, like they were new. I did find them in bookstores, or if they've been out for a few years and I ended up, buying them or whatever. But that specific one, drawing from the funny side of the brain, I loved because as everyone knows who watches this show, I love comic strips. I have my Wiz comic, um, and I always love to draw humor and write humor, and that's another thing I like to think I have a knack for. Um, but before your book, everything I learned about writing humor came from reading comic strips,
Oh, well, good. That's great.
and then having the process kind of broken down for me and be like, oh, there is a formula.
Yes,
You
there
know,
is.
I didn't really understand I didn't I didn't have the formula broken down into step one, step two, step three, step four. I just understood if I'm doing a 3 panel joke, I have to have the punchline in panel three. If I'm doing a 4 panel, I have to have the punchline usually in panel four. So it
Yeah, but
was.
that's the thing I talk about. Is there? It was interesting to be able to show that is that you don't have to put the punchline where everyone thinks you put the punchline because there are some punchlines after the punchline where people the character looks at the viewer and that's the comment. So it's a punchline on a punchline.
Yeah.
But I also would articulate things like I'm saying now. Other people know we're watching this, but they don't know they know. For instance, I have a cartoon on the cover where I have this kangaroo with all these toys and crap in his pouch. And this little kangaroo looking at him, and the little kangaroo looks upset. And the mom kangaroo has its arms like this. And I said, you have to have a setup line. Now, what do you do when you have a 1 panel drawing? Where's the setup line? You just have a punch line. Where's this? So what you do is the visual has to set up the whole punchline. Has to have everything in it, so you can now comment on that. So the comment at the bottom is, mother says to the little baby kangaroo, clean your room. Referring to the toys in the pouch.
I know the pick cover very well. I know that joke. It made me chuckle when I remember you know, every time I would look at it, but like when I bought it, I'm like, oh, that made me chuckle. I'm like, okay. And
Yeah.
actually, that's what one of the things that made me buy the book. You made me laugh
Oh, that's
on
great.
the cover. You know, they say, you know, you shouldn't judge a book by a cover, but if you are going to make me laugh and I'm trying to buy a book about humor and on the cover you're making me laugh, I know you know what you're doing, and I'm
Yeah,
going to.
I'm going to give you a tip for the next book you do. Also, for everybody here who's considering self-publishing a book or publishing a book, you know what the difference between the three covers of the book are? Because you have to know it's going to sell your book if it's in a bookstore. The three covers are the front cover, and the only purpose of that is just to get it noticed. Then you pick it up and look at the back cover, and they give you some information about what's inside, and you flip it. But the third part of the cover that no one thinks about is the most important if you're in a bookstore. That's the spine, because books are not stocked face out.
Yeah.
They're stocked out like this. Oh.
Okay.
And so if this doesn't have a lot of contrast, you won't read it. Someone's not going to pick it up. You have to make sure they pick up that's a whole thing. They have to pick up the book. So if you ever do a book, someone will show you the front cover and back cover, and you'll say, great, they look terrific. But there's a little slender part there that they'll show you. Make sure that looks good too. That's the spine of the book. So it's a little free advice right there for whatever it's worth.
That's good advice, though. You know,
Okay.
you need to be able to see that. You know, people don't think of the spine that often.
Yeah, right.
They just put the title on it and the author maybe, and that's it.
Right.
But yeah, no, it's really everything there is important. Let me go to the comments, see if we got any. Heidi says I have that book too, so I think she was talking about the drawing from the funny side of the brain.
Thank you.
And Tom. Oh, Tom. Hey, Tom Ramirez. He goes, yes, you do. I don't know. I hope he was talking about when I said I hope I'm writing funny every week. But Tom Ramirez, awesome guy, fan of the show, and had an awesome comic shop. And, you know, I'll be reaching out to you soon, Tom. So yeah. If you guys, I'll give you a minute or two if you have some questions, because I'm kind of out of questions right now. So
we talked about so much stuff. I think we covered so much.
So let me just give them a minute to see if there's any more questions. But yeah, in the meantime, you know, where can they find this book?
Amazon. Yeah, I mean, it's other stores, I believe, but Amazon stocked it right away, and it's selling very nicely on Amazon. So they'll get it to you. David Chase seems to have a question.
Yes, I was going to get to that. He says, I notice a lot of detail in the characters in your drawing books. Do you ever think the environment or the backgrounds is important in the creative process, or just characters?
I think that for me, I'm a character designer basically, so that's where I go, and I like to do it. But if there is a special genre like a horror thing, and you're drawing a castle, or something like that, or it's a swamp and it's dangerous, then I think that the environment becomes a character also, and it can be a lot of fun. I mean, you can take a lot of liberties. You don't have to always have the correct perspective. If you know you're breaking the perspective, it can be interesting. If you're just breaking perspective left and right, no one knows what the hell you're doing.
Yeah, I will say you have a great book. I think I have it, or I know. Oh yeah, you have what's it called? The Fantasy World books. It's like the anime backgrounds or whatever. I can't remember. I'd have to get the book.
Okay, that's right.
It's I think I could. Whoops, just knocked over a bunch of papers. It's called. Oh, it's from your Manga Mania line, Fantasy Worlds. Hold on, I'll go get the cover so you can see it.
Mike.
Okay, so Manga Mania, Fantasy Worlds. So you got this, which goes into people
Yeah.
and it does talk about backgrounds, I believe, if I remember correctly.
Good memory.
This is all people right now. Maybe I was wrong. I thought you had a book on environments.
No, not just environments. I did one of video game characters. Had a lot of environments in that one.
Maybe that's the one. I don't know if I have that one.
But
I remember seeing a book that you had some that you had some good environment.
yeah,
You
I
know,
have chapters on that sometimes. I do.
yeah, yeah, but yeah, no, great book too. Like I said, I have a bunch of your anime
Thank you.
manga
Thank you.
stuff.
That was fun to make.
When I was getting into learning to draw, well, I'll say this: when I was younger, anime was an influence on me. I didn't realize it was, but shows I watched as a kid were either done just overseas or I was actually watching anime that was, edited and dubbed in America, like Voltron or whatever it was. And so it's always been part of my style, but I never really embraced it. And when I wanted to really learn to embrace it in I want to say the late 90s, I picked up your first Manga Mania book, I believe it was, which I have over there as well. And I just collected a bunch of them and some more of your stuff as it went on because I love the style. I always have. When I taught college, I used to outlaw anime in the classroom because that's what everyone drew, and I just wanted to be more versatile as artists. So everyone thought I hated it, but I love
Mhm.
drawing this stuff. Um, but yeah, and it was because of you that I was able to start
Oh, thanks.
nailing down certain aspects that I wasn't getting just by viewing um, anime or manga.
Okay.
We got another comment here or question. Is this? I noticed that you use an alternate illustration on the spine of the book with the little puppy in the little square. So I was wondering if you had free reign over covers as well as the content.
Well, free reign is not really free reign. In other words, there are considerations. If I decided I wanted to read this, that you can have a little tug of war with your publisher if you don't listen to your publisher, but they're in business because they know what they're doing, and everybody can consider something. So I like to come to it with that aspect in mind. Um, but as far as the dimensions of the book, I never have much input in that. I don't know if I necessarily want to because the publisher has certain um, targets they're going to hit. They might want a different dimension this time to change so look like Chris has a different book out, not like these other ones. It's different, so they'll want that. Or they might want it to be I don't know, a thicker paper, and which will take a different type of cover or spiral thing. I really leave that to them. The cover we definitely agree on, but they'll have their say. They'll listen to it, and maybe they'll listen to me, and it always works out. I've never had any kind of like really not seeing eye to eye. I mean, we all want the same thing. We want people to like it, and like people to buy it. So how far out can we be? They may have an idea they want a certain character. You've got to have a fantasy character, or we don't want a dog on the cover because everyone's going to think this is a book about animals and it's about mainly people. So okay, well, I got it. There, let me. How about if I do this? I'll come back with something. And so I just went through that with them with a new book. They sent me 8 different possible covers. 8. It's amazing.
On this book?
No, no, it's a different
Oh, a different book.
coming
Okay.
next.
Okay.
It's like you can look at this and think like, why do I have to do all this? And the answer is, you got to be kidding. They want to know what you think. They're showing you everything they have. They're making changes. They want you to like it. You think this is a pain in the neck? You're in the wrong business.
Yeah.
This is a good problem.
No, that's but that's part of the creative process. When you're working for a publisher, more people than you have an input. When
Absolutely.
you self-publish, it's all you. You know.
Yes, yes, and there's always I think a misunderstanding about that from people who are sometimes they're I don't know if they're champions of self-publishing. There are those people who self-publish. You're right. You have to do it all, but you have to also know what you can't do. You know, as well. I mean, do you really want to not do marketing well? Do you want to not do book design well? Do you not want to do, inventory well? Now there are places I think that, and I don't really know anything about them. I don't know much that will handle all that stuff. So maybe there's a solution there, but I don't know. I shouldn't be talking too much about it because I don't know a whole ton about self-publishing.
Uh, yeah, no. If you want to know actually more, I have videos with indie publishers on here,
Oh, okay.
specifically comic indie publishers that you can go back and
Yeah.
look up JD Calderon. My interview with him, he'll have that. We got one more comment, and then I think we'll wrap it up. This is
Okay.
from I'm sorry, is it Luco or Lucho? Thank you, Christopher, for answering my question. And then he says, and
Hey,
thank you.
thanks you.
Yeah, thanks for asking the question and thanks for watching. Um, it's it's honestly been a lot of fun. I always enjoy chatting with you, and I'm loving the new book. And
No, great. Thank you for having me again. Thank you everybody who came. It's really so nice to have everybody here and to joke back and forth.
absolutely. And I'm gonna just drop you backstage.
Okay.
All right, everyone. So that was tonight's show. A lot of fun. Definitely hop on Amazon, pick up this book, How to Be Super Creative, The Artist's Guide to Unleashing Your Imagination. Like I said, I'm only a few um, chapters. Well, I'm in chapter 2, but I'm having a blast reading this. It's so much fun. Um, and like Chris said, great for um, beginners, intermediate people. People learn, on their way or whatever path they're on. Who just even if you just want to create and you're not looking to be professional. You just want to create art for the sake of making art. This is a great book here on you know your imagination. So with that, you guys, I will see you all next week with another guest. Don't forget, you can pop on Amazon and get my book, The Whimsical Wiz, the complete 2023 collection. And on May 4th, I will be at Croton Comic Con. I will get you guys the address by the show next week. All right. You guys have a great rest of your day, and I will see you all later.